Today we're here with Kay Pudlik, a charter member of Hope United Methodist Church, to visit with Kay a little bit about her experience at this church as a charter member and in some of the early years of Hope's experience as a Christian community. Kay, tell us how you heard about this Christian gathering over at Mission Viejo that ultimately became Hope Church.
Uh, we got a flyer at our mailbox, and the flyer talked about a new group that was starting up, sponsored by Parker Methodist Church, and it was going to meet at Mission Viejo Show Home.
And you were living in that neighborhood?
And we were in a neighborhood called Meadowwood, which was a nearby neighborhood. They panned, and I don't know how big an area they put flyers out, but I think a lot.
Okay.
And we were going to Park Hill Methodist at the time, and our oldest daughter Stephanie was about 6 months old in September of '74. And we thought, well, this sounded like a great idea. And so we went.
Well, tell me about the first meeting that you attended. Where was it and what happened?
It was the Valencia Model Show Home in Mission Viejo. Um, and we walked inside and were greeted by Reverend MacArthur from Parker Church, Ron Bay, and a guitar player, a wonderful woman who played the guitar for the group. I can't remember her name.
Yeah.
Um, and we all sat on the floor. No chairs in that first meeting.
And of
No
course,
fold-up chairs.
and of course, you brought Stephanie,
And of
who's six
course,
months old.
Stephanie was 6 months old, and I think I probably brought Cheerios and things to entertain her on the floor. So that um, and met the Metcalfs and the Harris and the Bryants, who lived in the same general area. Some lived in Mission Viejo and the Metcalfs in Meadowwood.
And some of those became charter members of this church.
Yes, yes, some
Well,
did.
what was the service like? Did you have a sermon and sing songs?
We did. And I think Ron Bay led the singing, and we had the guitar, wonderful guitar music, and Reverend MacArthur preached a sermon. It was very informal, but we liked it very much.
Did it meet on Sunday or did you meet
It
another day?
No, it did meet on Sunday.
How did
And
Pastor
it
MacArthur
met,
do that?
that's a good question. I always wondered, how did they do that? But I can't remember what time we met, but it could have been early, for him to go back to Parker.
So he'd essentially do double
He
duty.
did.
Yeah.
He
Well,
did.
tell us what you
And
remember.
his wife was delightful too.
Did she sing or play the guitar or
She,
anything?
I don't think she did, but she just was a delightful person, very welcoming. Um, and it just, some of the others had young children also, and just could really feel camaraderie from the very beginning.
Yeah. Well,
So,
tell us what you remember about Dale MacArthur.
um, I thought he was a wonderful pastor, very caring. He and his wife both caring about this new little congregation, and it was developed as a mission outreach for Parker. So it was part of their mission to, they thought that a Methodist church was needed in the Southeast Metro area. And I don't know how they came about deciding that our group was kind of where it needed to be. I think maybe in part Ron Bay, who went to the Parker Methodist, who was there in the beginning, um, I think he lived in Mission Viejo kind of area. So I think the Parker Church had people who were um, living in the South Metro area. So that may have been part of it.
Well, you're a long ways from the Park Hill Methodist Church, living out
Yes,
there,
and
and
that was kind of what we thought. This
yes.
is a lot closer, and with Stephanie, and she was, like I said, 6 months old. It
Sure.
just worked out. So,
Well, how many people came to these meetings at the show home?
um, I think it varied, but I, it could have been 15 to 20 at times. I don't think in the beginning, maybe 12. Um, but if you count the pastor, his wife,
Sure.
and the four from Parker, um, I can't remember exactly, but the first time I think we just sat in a circle on the floor. So it was a show home living room. I don't know how many for sure, but
Sure.
but
Well,
it was a good memory, that's
these
for
early
sure.
meetings were in 1974.
Yes.
And how long did they continue?
They continued really until the church, I can't remember exactly how long, but the church approached us, and I know the church also approached people living around the current Hope Methodist, Dayton and Bellevue area
Mhm.
to help start a Methodist church in land that the church had, and asked us as a group to come and join
So you had this
that
sort of
group.
nucleus of people who had
Yes.
started with these informal meetings, and
Right.
then it got more
Although
formalized
it
to,
was, I mean, it was informal, but it was church. It was in the show home. It didn't matter. It was in a show home, and um, one day I remember the guitar player wasn't going to be able to make it, and I think probably Ron Bay couldn't either. And so Dave, my husband Dave, led the singing, and I played the auto harp,
all right.
which
Well,
was not my
uh,
forte,
you
however.
told me that Dave had experience with opera and was
He
quite a
did,
singer.
absolutely. He and have always loved the choir at Hope Church, and just music in his heart. So for sure.
Well, I wish he were here to talk with us. He was
I
quite
do
a
too.
fellow.
He sure was.
That's
He
terrific.
was.
Well,
And
go ahead.
I was just going to say, once the church started, once the church asked um, people at the Valencia Mission Viejo group and the ones that lived in the neighborhood around the church, um, the church hired a pastor, Reverend Bob Cole.
Yes, and I believe that was in June of 1975. Bob Cole
Yes.
was appointed by the conference.
Right.
Still didn't have a building, and I assume we're still meeting at the mobile home, I mean, the model home?
No, actually, once the church hired Reverend Cole, the church started meeting then in the lower unit, Bellevue lower unit,
Okay, at the school.
at the
Yep.
school.
Uh-huh. And
So
did,
that was the end of the group at the Mission Viejo.
and by that
End of
time,
that. So it just all kind of flowed
yep,
together into the meeting at the lower unit. And
Well, tell us about
so,
those early meetings over
so,
at the school
well,
in the
before
store
we
unit.
met at the school, um, we met, and I can't tell you how they decided who should be involved with the nominating committee for, basically nominating committee for the church,
To organize the
to
church.
organize the
Yeah.
church. And this was before any meetings at the lower unit. And I just remember being asked to go and went um, to Reverend Cole's house. We sat around his round kitchen table, and Shirley was there,
Shirley
Shirley
Hole.
Hall,
Yeah.
and I can't even tell you who all was there otherwise. Um, but Reverend Cole had the Book of Discipline. He opened up the book, and we just started going down what we needed to
You needed
start the
some
church.
trustees. You
What
needed
we needed,
a
yes.
lay leader. You
Oh,
need
well, the
educators.
first thing we needed was the nominating committee. So
That's
there
right.
we
Yes.
were.
Yeah.
So we had that job right off. So we were doing that. So we were there responsible for finding all the different leaders we needed in the church.
And I assume you and Dave took some of those
Oh,
positions.
we did because I was there, and we got on the phone. We went around the circle. It was literally, um, here's the job, and um, and of course Reverend Cole didn't know who would be good for what job.
Yes.
Um, and so we just kept going around. So um, I ended up with children's ministries in addition to nominating committee.
Yes.
And I know Mary Metcalf was missions, and Dave was, he became stewardship by himself. The stewardship committee was Dave. The finance committee was Dave, because we went around again and we needed someone with those skills. And Dave was, he very gracious and accepting, and it all worked out really well. So I know Dave Hall did so much and so active in so many literally groundbreaking
Yes.
work in the church. So
Yeah.
he was in there for sure.
Well, after you kind of got organized, then you continued meeting at the school.
Yes.
Tell me what those services were like.
Those services, I'm just looking, were, I'm thinking of Reverend Cole was, we enjoyed his sermons. Barb Lair, we had a choir. It was pretty amazing how many people came to our services. And Dave sang a lot of solos in the choir. Barb Lair did a great job as choir director.
Did you have a
And
piano or an organ or anything in the
yes,
school?
a piano.
Yeah.
A piano at the school.
Yeah.
So we had a big storage, well, maybe more than one, but one in particular, I know for the children's things, those big metal storage cabinets that the school let us keep some of our things in
Yes.
and lock up during the week. But being children's ministry, I was in charge of children's church, Sunday school, getting people to be Sunday school teachers. In the summer, I was in charge of Bible school
Yeah.
and getting people for Bible school, teachers. And one year when Al Brown was pastor, and Mary Metcalf assisted me. We had two full sessions of Vacation Church School here at Hope,
All right.
and the lights went out,
Oh, no.
power gone.
Oh,
All the children out on the blacktop in the parking lot
no.
playing games, and
Uh,
so I mean it all worked out. But and that was in boy, that was, I'm thinking close to about 1980, because then my youngest daughter Lori was, she was little,
yeah. Well,
and
they moved into the building in 79, I
mm-hmm,
believe. So
mm-hmm,
76, 75
right,
to
because
79, they met at the school
right,
before you actually had a
right.
building.
And Reverend Schultz, oh my goodness, we loved his sermons. The
Tell
Gospel
us about him.
according to Snoopy, Peanuts, Gospel according to Peanuts. And oh my goodness, he and his wife, we all called her Grandma Ruth. She was just a sweetheart, rocked all the babies in the nursery. And just wonderful people.
Well,
And
and I
it's
believe
such a tribute um, to him to have the fellowship hall named after him.
I agree. And I believe he had retired, came out of
Yes,
retirement to serve at Hope.
yes, he did.
Yep.
He did. He baptized my daughter
All right.
Lori. So in fellowship hall, which was the sanctuary at that time, and just, but such wonderful memories
Well,
of
one of the
him
first
too.
things that this church seemed to do, even before they had a building, was to look for mission and outreach to
Yes,
sponsor a refugee family. Were you
yes.
involved in
I,
that?
Dave and I were one of the four, one of the four couples.
And tell us
So
about that.
that was an awesome experience. The Cow family, and of course, Mary Metcalf had so much to do with that. Um, I've just felt like Hope Church Missions is the heart of Hope Church, and has been from the very beginning. And um, it's to say what all that we did for the family, well, to help find the place to live. Um, Dave took the children to get them enrolled in school, and he took he took the grandmother, because it was the mother and the grandmother and all the children. Um, the grandmother's teeth were just rotten down to the bone, and took her. I found an organization called, at that time, called Seroptimus, for a women's service group that provided dentures for people who couldn't afford dentures.
Right.
And so I found them, and Dave took her to Denver General to get all her teeth pulled. Now, it's someone who doesn't speak English,
Wow.
and it was quite something. But she got dentures. We got her
And
dentures.
she trusted Dave enough to go and do that?
I don't know how. I don't know how he did it. I mean, he was pretty amazing, and just so good with people.
And then the
And
kids did get enrolled in school?
oh yes, yes, he took them to, and some of the older ones to I think at West, Middle, and Aurora. And the elementary kids, oh yes, they went to school, and
Well,
absolutely.
I believe also then either the grandfather or the father joined this family years later.
Both, both, and through the Red Cross. And amazing, because when they um, from the way I understand it, pushed the family, the father, the grandfather, pushed the family out on the boat.
And
And
left them
then,
behind?
and yeah, they stayed behind. And then to get, I mean, what a joyous, to get reconnected. It was several years.
Yeah.
It was sometime later.
That's an
But
amazing
there,
story.
I know. And that was the first mission project at Hope. And Mary and Dwayne are still in contact with the Cow family. And um, as you know, they came
Yes, for the
for our
40th
40th
anniversary.
anniversary. It was great to see them
That was a
again. It
wonderful
was
day.
wonderful to see them and to see. I think the thing you don't know is the outreach and the effect of what you do, the effect it has over time, and what it meant to the people who were helped by, and what it did for us too.
Yes.
And I mean, there's many stories that go along with that.
That's a great example of
And
the
so,
Christian spirit in my view. That was
well,
terrific.
and Mary probably told you about when they had the baby lift from Vietnam. Um, there was, I know I did, helped take care of babies um, over by Rose Hospital. The babies that came in, we helped.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things that kind of went along with that. And she was involved with Lutheran Social Services, I believe, too. And
I think
so,
it's amazing and a tribute to all of the early members of the church to take this on when you really didn't have a building and you were just getting started as an organization to say, we want to do this for this family. It's terrific.
it was a need that was put out there. I think Reverend Cole, um, and they were looking for churches to help, and here we were. And when we helped as couples.
Sure. Well, and
Really.
you had a young
I mean,
family. You had
yes.
lots of
Oh,
things going
yes.
on in your
Yes.
life.
Stephanie came with me to help vacuum and do some things in their apartment. She was right there. And oh, yes, the children are, very much a part of it. And Lori was too when she was little. And um, she was right there when um, we were doing the 2 sessions of Vacation Church School, and she was just an infant. So she was very much babe in arms going and helping too,
And now has
and
grown up
there's
in this church. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So, yes,
Well, after a few years meeting at the school, the Rocky Mountain Conference for the Methodist Church owned this property at the corner of Bellevue and Dayton,
hmm
and that was the property that would eventually become Hope Church.
correct.
Well, tell us how you got a name for this church.
We voted.
Did you?
We put in different name suggestions, and I remember personally voting for the name Sunrise. Um, and Bellevue was one of the names suggested. Um, and I'm very glad that Sunrise was not the ultimate name, as
And I
it
believe
turned
that was
out.
spelled S-O-N,
Mm-hmm,
Sunrise, yeah.
mm-hmm. So
I hadn't heard that Bellevue was one of the names suggested.
Bellevue, as the name of the street,
Yeah.
was.
And was it
Um,
a Democratic thing? The majority vote won the,
I can't remember. I
yeah,
remember we voted,
yeah.
and I'm very glad that Hope was the name that won the election as far
That's
as.
good. Well, tell us about the early experiences of moving over here. You talked about the lights going out at Vacation Bible
And
School.
that was here.
Yeah, that was in the building here. But
Mm-hmm.
as I understand it, there was only one building, and that's the Schul Fellowship Hall now,
Yes,
and you used it for all purposes. So you'd have church
we
there?
did, and we did have Sunday school downstairs.
Okay.
So in the older part of the downstairs. So
And
that
then,
it's evolved over time, to
yes,
say the least.
yeah. And
And
for worship service, would you use, you didn't have any pews, you just used chairs?
chairs,
No?
folding
Well, you
chairs.
had a choir and you had a
Oh,
podium
we've
for the
always had
pastor.
wonderful music at Hope. Hope music is another thing that I think Hope has just had wonderful music, wonderful leaders and pastors, and such talented people in the church.
Yes. Well, I've heard stories about the early years of the building at the corner of Bellevue and Dayton, about the parking lot and the flooding of the basement. Do you
Oh,
remember
I
those
do
things?
remember flooding of the basement. Yes. Yes, because water just went in that lower door. Yes.
And you're
And
trying to have a
I
Sunday school?
oh, we had lots of interesting things that happened. Oh, yes, and trying to dry out the carpet and yeah. No, there were issues with in the parking lot was
It was not paved
had
in those days
no,
originally.
not
No?
originally. No, and um uh I remember sitting out everybody bring your own folding chair kind of thing
Yes.
for the groundbreaking and things like that too.
Oh. Well, Al
So it was
Brown then is appointed to Hope United
hmm
Methodist Church. Tell
correct.
us what you remember about how Al Brown, what was his personality like?
He was a fun-loving person, and um, he and Laura, I have a lot of good, wonderful memories of Laura. She was um, very special to me. And Al, I can just say a fun-loving person. Um, I, I do remember when the lights went out, when we were holding vacation church school with all the kids,
Yes.
and there were emergency lights so we could get out. However, he thought it was hysterically funny, which Mary Metcalf and I were not. We didn't go along with
I wouldn't
that.
think so.
We didn't think it was quite as funny as he did.
Oh,
I think because it's like everything else, you do what you need to do, take care of things and move on and yeah, have fun.
well, tell us
So,
about some of the Christian services in the original building. How did that go?
um, I think very much in many ways very similar to what we have now. It was not not a whole lot different. It was more informal in many ways.
Yes.
Um, and we had children's church, like I said, um, in Sunday school. So the children had activities, which I was in charge of most of the time. The music was always wonderful
I think music has
and
always been a
always
hallmark of
been a
this church.
hallmark.
Yeah.
And oh, during like the Monday, Thursday services um, were always really special. Um, People, of course, we had our potlucks, our famous potlucks
Yes.
for always fun. So we had a lot of fun, and I think, and we still do. So just a lot of people pitched in and helped. A volunteer, I think, was um, it wasn't as hard to get volunteers back then. People just expected to pitch in
And the
and
staff
share.
was minimal. You had a pastor, but that was about all.
Correct,
Everything else
correct.
was volunteer. Yeah.
It pretty much was.
Yeah.
And like I said, you keep asking until you find people who can do what you need to do.
Yes.
And we've been really lucky in this church to have really wonderful, talented people.
I agree.
So,
Well, after Al Brown, Richard Vickery was appointed as pastor. Do you remember
yes,
him?
of course,
Yeah, tell us
of
what you remember about
course.
him.
My favorite memory of Reverend Vickery was, of course, I was involved with the children's programs and things, and I thought he was such a he, good sport. Let me put it that way. He volunteered. I think I was helping kids make candles and things like that, and um, he volunteered to help make bricks where you stomp around in the mud and making these bricks. And we had everything set up
The
like
mud and the
where's
straw and the
this is
things you
Bible
need.
school and oh yeah, yeah. And I thought, and he was dressed up in like period kind of. I thought that was just the neatest thing for him to just get out there with the kids and helping make bricks.
Yes.
We're demonstrating on how you do things, making things from Bible days, and I that was such a good, that was my favorite memory.
Well,
So,
after Richard Vickery, Sam Day became the
yes,
senior pastor here. Tell us what you remember about Sam Day.
yes. Just, oh, he was an awesome pastor, and his sermons. I'm trying to think of how he did his sermons. He had a unique way of naming his sermons that was just inviting one you wanted to hear.
Yes.
And and when Dave died in '93, he did his service and was just really helpful. So just a lot of good memories of him and a lot of fun. He was a fun person. We've had a lot of really super pastors here.
Yes.
So yes,
Well, Margaret Hankins and John Lee
yes.
followed Sam Day. Tell us what you remember about Margaret Hankins.
Oh, Margaret is dear heart to me.
We're continuing our visit with Kay Pudlik, and she's talking about Margaret Hankins, a pastor at Hope Church, and how helpful she was to her during a difficult time in her life. So continue telling us about that, Kay.
Okay. Um, when after Dave died, um, my parents started experiencing some severe health problems, and my dad had a massive stroke just a few weeks later. Um, Eventually, I moved my parents to Colorado to be close to us and make their care easier as
Mhm.
much as possible, easier for us. And I remember when my mother was in the hospital um, with, oh, she had Parkinson's and some different things that I remember calling Margaret and John on the phone and just getting, input and just help from Margaret, a lot of help from Margaret. She just really was always there, um, always available
You
to
mentioned
help.
that she did a service for your father.
She was there at the house, came to the hospital um, just before my mother died. My mother had a kind of a crisis. She was in a rehab situation and had to go emergency to the hospital. And Margaret came, was there and talked with her and with my daughters and I before she died. And then when my father was in hospice, Margaret came and did the most beautiful service with him within just hours before he died, and just heart Margaret.
Sure. You
Yes.
also mentioned Marilyn Lesser of
And
Hope Church.
yes, Marilyn Lesser um, was another wonderful resource, and just such an understanding pastor, and I think gave me a lot of suggestions and a lot of information on, how to deal with um, issues with my parents, and um, just kind of helped a lot of family.
Yeah.
She's just such a wonderful pastor too,
Yeah.
and Hope has had the most wonderful pastors and retired pastors, and a lot of resources for all of us. Just really great. So,
Well, you've told us quite a bit about what Hope has meant to you and your family. Do you have a favorite memory of your experiences here at Hope?
oh, I have trying to think of which ones. Many, many. I think just so many memories of so many friends, Hope friends, and friends from choir, and friends, from Dave and I, our friends, current friends. Just Hope is a friendly church, and um, having fun here, having fun. Still love the children's programs, and wish I could do more to help. But I think some of those are some of my favorite. One of the ones I haven't mentioned, that with the children's ministries, the wreath making started at the very beginning of Hope Church,
Is
the
that right?
Advent wreath, and started before we had a building. Um, Dave had bought the chicken wire to make wreaths, and
Yes.
purchased um, we had purchased the greens and stuff for the chicken wire, and people were supposed to come over and help Dave put the chicken wire wreaths together and cut the chicken wire and all of that.
Sure.
And as Colorado would have it, there was a big snowstorm, kind of semi-blizzard, and no one could
Uh-oh.
come, not even people who lived in the same development. It was like, and so Dave made all the chicken wire wreaths himself, did it all.
Wow.
And we had that, and we had our Advent workshop, and so we did ask people to keep the wreaths bases and bring them back.
Sure.
But doing that with my grandsons, making the Advent wreaths, is really a lot of fun, and nice to see so many traditions and things that started in the beginning are still part of this wonderful church.
Amen. And that you can share with different
Yes,
generations. Yes.
exactly, exactly.
Well, we've talked a lot about the past 42 years of Hope's history. What would
Mhm.
you like to see Hope do in, say, the next 40 years?
I would like to see Hope Church continue its mission outreach, and um, the wonderful inclusiveness and welcoming to everyone, um, the wonderful children's programs, the beautiful music, and with people sharing their talents, and just kind of arms out wide, just pulling everyone who comes in contact with this church just to be just friendly and welcoming, and reaching out with all the talents this church, the people that have in this church have, and sharing it with the community and the world. I love the Africa, and couldn't go because some joint issues.
Sure.
It's the back. The back said no to the ruts in the road there, so didn't get to do that. But and the mission, to me, mission is the heart. Mission in the world, mission in the community. So that's what I'd like to see continue and grow.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your memories of Hope Church. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us?
I'm thinking you covered it very well, Charlie.
Well,
Just and such just such a wonderful, so wonderful to see, having been in on the ground floor, literally sitting on the floor in the show, just to see the outreach that Hope Church has really in the world.
I'm sure
And
it's hard to imagine in those early meetings what this church really became and how it's touched many
right,
lives since
and
then.
it's really it very much so awe-inspiring in some ways, and to see the Cal family on the 40th anniversary was really very, very cool. And to see Kate work with the children and all the wonderful activities and programs and things for the children and youth is really a wonderful blessing.
Yes, it is.
So
Okay, thank you for all of your contributions to that. It's a wonderful legacy.
thank you very much, Charlie.